Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode here at Birds on a Blue Note, joined by RJ and Zach. Hey boys, how you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Doing good. Zach,
How you doing,
yourself?
man?
Doing good, man. All
Good,
right,
good.
so today we actually have a special mailbag episode. We have asked the Bleacher Report community for a few topics they wanted to hear from us on, and we went ahead and chose three of the most popular ones based off of, other community members' feedback. We do have a fourth if we have enough time, but let's hop right in. The first one is going to come from Brian. He would like to hear about some contract talk. What does a lifetime deal look like for Goldie? What would an early long-term deal, kind of like what the Braves have been doing for Jaywalk, look like as far as years and dollars? And, as far as Nolan's future, are we going to sign him to a long-term deal or, see how he goes? I think that's obviously Gorman. I take it as we
Gorman,
have
yeah.
Nato
Gorman
on.
is, yeah, I'll let you
All
finish.
right. Perfect. So I'm going to kick that over to you first. Zach, let's start it off. What's your take on this?
My first take is don't extend either of them. Not Goldie, not
Hmm.
Nado. Uh, I've always been a big believer in move off a year too early than a year too late. So while right now the value's still up, you still have the name brand tag, price tag on them both, and you could really replenish. Look what we got for Jordan Montgomery. We replenished most of our top 10 prospects, or a quarter of them, come from that trade or those trades that we made at the deadline. We could replenish the entire pitching staff just with moving one of those guys, let alone both of them. The decline has been real. I know we're only 11 games in, but goalie's exit velo is down 5 miles an hour. His barrel is down 9%. His strikeout percentage is raised 12%. He's not catching up to the fastball. And if you look from 2022 to 2023, it went down as well with all the StatCast stats. And same thing with Nato. I mean, he hasn't barreled a single ball this year. That's tragedy. So that's the biggest thing on that is just moving both while the value's high. Right now, you can still get a lot out of them. The biggest thing with Jordan Walker is wait. I'm closer to wanting to extend Wynn than I am Walker at this point. At least with Wynn, you know what you're getting from defensively. That's something he could be a shortstop for you for the next 5, 6 years, just based on defense alone and him hitting 250. So that's my big thing with Walker. But I'll kick it over to you guys. What are you thinking?
RJ?
I disagree with almost everything you said. Um, well, I
Go
don't
on.
I don't completely disagree with the idea of maybe trading Goldschmidt and Arenado. I would wait for the season to play out a little bit, and I would still hold on to Nato more so than I would Goldie. Goldie's a free agent at the end of the season. Um, and it just kind of depends where we're at the trade deadline. If we're playing winning ball or we're in contention, you obviously want to keep him, even if he's not hitting as well as he normally is, just from a leadership standpoint. And club morale. If you trade away like one of the key locker room pieces of the club, it's going to really just make the other players feel like, okay, what are we even trying here for? Um, as far as Goldschmidt's, Arnaud is locked up for what, another 4 years after the season, so that's not really a concern as far as the contract is, what to do with him. I would just say let him play it out unless someone offers us something crazy, which right now he's not earning that, so we'll see. Goldschmidt, I would go year to year. Kind of depends how he does. Like it's early. He's historically a slow starter, other than his MVP season. There is reason to believe he can turn it around because he's had these slow starts before and has turned it around in the past. I know he's older. I know the StatCast data does not look good. I'm a big StatCast guy myself. I work as data analyst, so I always look at underlying metrics. But with Goldschmidt, yeah, I would just year to year see where he's at the end of the season. 1 year deal if he would be open to that. If not, there's a couple different ways we could go about first base in the future, which we'll talk about later in prospect talk. As far as Walker is concerned, I would actually buy out his RBers right now and try to extend him because if anything, that would show faith in him as a long-term key piece of this organization and have him feeling like that, hey, these guys really value me and they really see a bright future in myself, and that will do nothing but give him confidence. It's similar to what the Braves did with Acuna, which a lot of people are like, "Oh my gosh, the Braves just totally ripped off Acuna. He'd be $300 million right now. He's playing for pennies based on what his current value is." But I could see something like that for Walker in the future. Same thing with Gorman. Gorman's definitely going to be a key cog in this lineup for years to come. I would also buy out those RBs and see what an extension looks like for him. Maybe like a 5, 6 year, 100 mil. I think he'd be. You would like to see the strikeouts go down first, but you know he's going to provide 30 home runs plus a year at second base. That's just invaluable. Like how many other second basemen could do that? Another guy that we haven't talked about would be Lars Nootbaar. That's another guy that's
Hmm.
super important to the lineup. You know, having him at the top and getting on base consistently, he's got one of the more elite on base abilities in baseball. So that's another guy I would talk about extending for the future. Um, so those are my takeaways. I'm sorry I don't agree with everything you say, but you know, it's just how I see it.
No,
What do
that's
you
fun
think,
of it.
Trevor?
So, I mean, personally, you guys know me, but obviously all of our viewers don't. Ultimately, I am one of those people that I am open to trading anybody. Nobody should ever be off the block truly. If you are willing to offer a king's ransom for one of my guys, I will happily rob you blindly, just like we did for Colorado with Arenado. Things like that are going to happen every once in a while, and you can't just not be open to chatting without it. However, that being said, I think even Goldie at his worst is better than over half of the league's first baseman. So it just depends on where the front office sees the future going for us. The DH does provide a little more options with Goldie as he gets older, moving him into that spot. But I mean, really depends on what he wants too. If he isn't willing to, you know, or if he is willing to offer us a nice discount because he does like it here and whatnot, hell yeah, I will definitely give him a contract to stay here for a few years, man that stuff, because he's a good presence to have. He's one of those guys that's a hard worker, and if you are bringing up young core, sure, he may not be the most vocal leader, but his day in, day out is something to be respected and has always been respected in the Diamondbacks clubhouse and the Cardinals clubhouse. So there is some invaluability in there if the price is right for him. Now, as far as Jaywalk goes, similar concept to what RJ was saying here. I think you buy out his R beers, maybe give him an extra year or two on top of that for sure, for safety, just so he has that breathing room. These younger guys, the reason why they're willing to take these contracts is they don't know where their career is going to go. As much confidence as they have in themselves, freak injuries happen, stuff happens. So agents push them as well. When you can get that guaranteed money, get that guaranteed money. I'd like to offer a jaywalk something like, 6 and 75 and something like that. And see if he takes that. Buy out the few years, give him a nice AAV without breaking bank, where if he turns out to be what we think he's gonna be, that's gonna be a steal. But again, he gets the guarantee in baseball that he gets that money if he gets injured for a year or has a bad year. He's not hitting a contract year where he's going into it with bad comps. For Nolan, maybe something like 565, 560, 12, 15 a year for him. Or
I
sorry,
could see him making more just based on the power alone and what he's already showed in the major league level. But if we could get that, absolutely.
exactly. He's shown that power. He's shown that he can do that. And so really, yeah, it's going to be one of those things where personally, that's what, I would like to see, but just depends on if these guys want to be here with us. If they do, it's a pretty nice offer, getting a guaranteed 60 to 70 million, if you ask me. I
I
don't know
think
about
another
you,
thing that
but
we didn't touch on with those younger guys is a lot of them played together and they came up through the minors together. So
hmm
if you're offering like a Gorman and a Walker and a Win, and Scott's way too early, he's only played
Of course,
a
but
handful of
yeah.
games. But like in the future, someone like a Scott and like, hey, we locked up your buddies already. Like, let's be part of something together here. Let's grow this team together and we'll be the core. And I think they'd be more open to the idea of maybe taking a little bit less than they feel like they might earn in the future just based on how they perform. But yeah, these guys love each other. Like Walker and Wynn were like best friends in AAA, and
Well, they
I
got
mean,
drafted together.
yeah,
That comes from the
yeah,
very bottom. So
Yeah,
roommates, and yeah, for sure.
that does count for something. You can't really underestimate it. And if you give them the contract at the same time, that can go a long way.
Yeah,
To
like
come back
a
to this
Kyrie
topic,
Thomas almost in the Blues, just different sport, but that's what they did. They locked up Kyrie Thomas, same contract, same time.
no, yeah.
They came up to get the same thing.
No, yeah, and if you guys have anything else, we'll come back to it. Moving on to the next mailbag question. This one's going to be from Braun, and his question is, as we always hear a lot of talk, does spring training matter or not? And why only for some players slash situations, if so? So I'm gonna take this one myself first. Really, this comes down to a type of like seniority thing. The younger you are, the more you're fighting for that roster spot as a rookie or a sophomore season guy. That spring training really matters because you are trying to fight for that opening day roster for that starting spot versus a bench spot. Versus somebody like a Goldie, a Lynn, a Nato, a Gibby. Those veterans, for them, coaches aren't focused as much on that. Yeah, sure, they're tweaking things, but those guys know how to deal with a long season. They know what it takes to get warmed up. And think of spring training as more of like an extended warm up. If this regular season was going to be a long extra inning game, spring training is the warm up. Guys are stretching, they're goofing off at times, they're trying new stuff while they're throwing a ball and whatnot. And for them it isn't as serious because they know what they need to do, they know how prepared they need to be. And so, yeah, it isn't as bad of a situation for them. Obviously, guys that are looking to come back as well, they put a more stress on themselves too to do well and get that hot spot. But again, that's them fighting for a spot. Somebody like Carpenter wants some at bats. He's not just coming here only to lead. He wants to play because, again, on his contract, if he's not on the roster, he doesn't get paid by us at all. So, that's at least my take on it. What about you, RJ?
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head with that. It really just kind of depends where you're at in your career at that point. If you're someone that's a career minor leaguer, even like you don't even have to be like a top prospect, but just like someone who is invited to camp. You want to show out. You want the team to look at you like, wow, I didn't realize this guy had these skills. You are fighting for that last roster spot. You have everything to prove.
Yeah.
Whereas someone like a Goldschmidt or an Arnado or like even like in a more established like Contreras even doesn't really have to worry about that. This is third time of the year to kind of try out different things and maybe tweak some things that didn't work for him last year. Especially with the pitchers, like Kyle Gibson got lit up a little bit in a couple of the starts in spring training. People were like, "Oh my gosh, this guy's falling. We shouldn't have signed him." It's like, well, he's trying different things. He didn't have the best season last year, but he also knows what he needs to work on, and that's
Hmm.
spring trainings when you do that because the games
Exactly.
don't matter at all.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like Victor Scott, like he had a stellar spring, and I know he's off to a rough start in the majors right now, but that's the reason he's on the roster is because he performed so well during spring training. Um, Also the injuries, but he still like made an impression. Like whereas like before, maybe we would have just given that playing time to Ciani until
Hmm.
Carlson or Edmund got back. So absolutely, it matters for some players, not for others. It just really depends on where you're at in your career. If you're established, it doesn't matter so much. This is the time of year to work on things. But if you're trying to make the roster, or you're a top prospect, or a non-roster invitee, or anything of the sort, this is really your chance to show out and maybe get that opportunity to play in the majors. Um, Anything else that needs to be added, Zach?
yeah, I was just gonna say the biggest thing too with most vets, they're working on grips, trying to take the ball the other way. They get the more of the benefit of the doubt to come in and be rested and come in and do spring training to really, really get ready. Young guys, it's just like work is a good example. Whenever you've worked at a place for 10 years, you get the benefit of the doubt. You're allowed to show up on time. They're going to know you're just going to do what you need to do. But if you're brand new and this is your first year on a job for 6 months, you show up 10 minutes early. You need to make sure you're showing your bosses you're doing everything right. You're preparing the right way. You're going to go out and do above and beyond. It's fairly similar. So that's my only really takeaway on it.
I mean, I guess to clarify in my mind, to really answer Braun's question, spring training matters, but for different reasons for different players. It isn't like it doesn't matter, no matter who you are, veteran, but like you have a different idea of what you're trying to accomplish. Again, going back to that warm up, if you or I do warm ups, you might be more focused on different things during your warm ups than I am. Focusing on the stats is less important than knowing what the players' goals were in their mind. And
Process over results. Yeah.
exactly. And for us fans, we really don't have that. We only can go off of the numbers that we see. So it's a bit more difficult to know if a spring training was effective. I guess that would be the better question is, did a guy have an effective spring training or not? And really they know that themselves. I would say somebody like Gibby would probably come back and say, yeah, I had a pretty effective one. I worked through stuff and now I've had a, consistent thing. Whereas somebody
Goldie.
like Goldie might be like, no, I wasn't effective. My stuff that I tried this year threw me off. So, I mean, it matters ultimately, because it can set that tone, but it isn't the stats that matter or the standings, as we know as Cards fans winning spring training last year.
Yeah, that's
That
that
sure did a
good
whole
omen.
lot for us.
Yep. But the Dodgers won it this year, and it seems to be fine for them. So I guess it just
Well,
depends on the team.
still early in the season. Who knows where
Yeah.
we're going to be soon?
Yeah, the Dodgers are definitely going to fall off the face of the earth. It's terrible.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to CBC's question. The draft is the topic for this one, and he wants to know what's the best case scenario for us at 7, other than everybody having a heart attack and us getting the first pick at
Yeah.
7. RJ, what's your thoughts here?
Uh,
Realistically, who do you see us
realist,
getting?
realistically, well, the draft is very top heavy this year. There's a lot of really high end prospects. I think there's two players I look at that could be best case scenario that we could draft. One would be Chase Burns, which he's projected right now to go number 5. You never know. He may slip a couple spots. Their projections are never 100% accurate. Throws 102, wipeout slider, top end rotation arm. Exactly what we need, really. I mean, we've been talking about like we have had a hard time developing top line starters the last few years, and whether you agree with that or not, it's still something that we need for the future. Because right now, if you look at our aces, Sonny Gray, he's 34. Chase Burns is what, 21, 22. That would be a guy that we could draft, develop, and have in our system for a long time. The other one is this is the one that I was talking about earlier. It's like we'll see with Goldschmidt, maybe do 1 year at a time, depending on how he is.
I know where you're going with this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Nick Kurtz absolutely mashes. He just hit 3 home runs the other day. First baseman, maybe. I mean, between him and Bazana and Condon, they're like the 1A, 1B, 1C best bets in the draft. Um, Bazana and Condon are going to be gone. There's no shot they fall that far. But Nick Kurtz is a real possibility of falling to 7. And that would be, assuming we don't sign someone or we don't re-sign Goldie, that would be our first baseman of the future. That will be, in my opinion, best case scenario. Burns 1, Kurtz 2. Those are like the 2 top guys I'm looking for. Hopefully one of them slips. We can get one of them. What are your thoughts, Zach? I know you like a lot of these guys too.
You took the 2 that I had written down, so those are the big ones for me. Chase Burns for me is like if there's a way in heck that we can possibly get him, that's the guy. That big hammer curve, that 102, he could be in our major league staff by the beginning of next year. So he's really, really good. Maybe be a bullpen, maybe even be a bullpen guy by the end of the year. The other guy to throw at you guys is Connor Griffin. He's a 6'5" high schooler, tons of power. Line drives, goes the opposite field well. He's a lefty. He hits and pitches, but I think it's bad over pitching as of right now.
Yeah, Mason Wynn.
Right, 100%. So I'm really in lockstep with you. It's really just pitcher or over hitter. Like there's that guy from Arkansas, the pitcher. I can't think of his name is right now. But that's going to be the biggest question at 7 is do we take the impact bat or do we take the best pitcher available?
I think we just take best player.
I think so.
If Kurtz is
Flores is
available,
going to go
Burns
for
isn't,
best
take
player
Kurtz.
available.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we did with Walker. at the time we were like, we need pitching, but Walker was like such a highly touted, like high ceiling prospect at the time. And it was non-traditional for us because as an organization for years and years and years, we used to just draft based on like college ready arm and like how soon could they make the majors. Whereas when Flores took over, it kind of changed to like who's the highest impact player available. That's who we should take. And you could argue that, well, maybe that hasn't worked out for us lately because of the arms or lack of arms that we have. But at the same time, we wouldn't have a Gorman or we wouldn't have a Walker. Um, so yeah, there's an argument to be made both ways. But yeah, I think Zach and I are pretty much in agreement here. It's take whichever one's available. Hopefully one of them will be. Either one, I'd be ecstatic.
I mean, it can, a lot of things can happen in the draft. You can have the Angels doing a lot of bullshit like they normally do and messing themselves up. You got Cincy and Cleveland at the top of the draft. They can both fuck up royally. Like, you never know who these other teams are going for and what exactly they want. So, I mean, you know, not expecting to get like Jack or something like that in the draft.
Yeah.
But I mean, you never know what their priorities are or what flaws these scouts might think somebody has as they're going to develop because everybody has different scouting reports. This isn't like, other leagues where people go to the combine and everybody's got like a nice solid scouting report. You could send three different scouts to see a guy and get completely different reports from each one, varying like, this guy's going to be mid, this guy's going to be a bust, oh, this
Yeah,
guy's
like
a
the famous
superstar.
Mike Trout scouting report. They had him rated as what, like a 45 hitter. It's,
Brandel
Yeah,
Grichuk taking over him. Yeah.
yeah, and
yeah.
Randy. I mean, they're both Angels, so it's,
Right.
I mean, those things happen again, and that's where ultimately, like, I think Flores' strategy, like you guys were saying, and picking the best player is the best option ultimately, and whatnot there.
yeah. Even if you don't need that player, see, here's the thing about taking the best player. Even if you don't personally, like as an organization, need that player, now you just have excess of something that someone else will need that you could trade for something that you really need in the future. I mean, look at what the Orioles just did. They just got Corbin Burns based on drafting like that. They Orioles every year they've been killing it lately, but they always seem
Padres.
best player that they can possibly draft. And if they don't need it, they trade that guy for someone that they need on the major league roster.
Yeah.
Right. Padres and Dodgers similarly do the exact same kind of thing. It seems like their farm systems are always just absolutely packed at positions where they have three all-stars playing up the middle, or three
Dodgers,
all-stars like caliber guys playing up the middle, and they still have another one coming through and another one coming through and another one coming through. So and you
Dodgers
see
traded
what they've been able to
Rodon
do.
Alvarez. That's how sacked they were. And O'Neill
Exactly.
Cruz.
Exactly. So
Oh, I mean, we'll see where it comes. It's going to be interesting to see where everything falls. Obviously, we'll do a special episode as it gets closer to the draft, just going more in depth about all the prospects, draft order, all that sort of stuff. So, for those of you watching, stay tuned for on the lookout for that. And looks like we have a little bit of extra time. So, with that, let's focus on a bonus fourth question that we have today from Brianna, who is wondering what is going on with this increase in strikeouts from the team. Anybody want to hop in, take this one first?
I'll let you go ahead first, Zach. I took the last one first.
uh, I wouldn't read too far into it. A lot of the strikeouts, if you look at our main bats with Gorman, Nato, and Goldschmidt, all their strikeout rates are outrageous right now. And I don't really see, even with Gold, especially with Goldie and Nato, Nato's isn't that bad. I think he's only 16% on StatCast, but they're going to lower that down. Paul Goldschmidt's not going to end the year with 35% strikeout rate. So once we get our big bats actually rolling, it's going to be fine, especially with Nude out of the lineup as well. That's a dude who just never strikes out. So what do you think, RJ?
I think it's just guys pressing right now. Players trying to do too much. I think a lot of the lineup is aware that we're struggling offensively. So every batter that goes up to the plate feels like they have to do too much. Which is why, like I've liked recently, I'd like to call it Nolan Gorman. He's taken some better bats lately, hitting the other way, taking walks when he needed to. They're starting to figure it out, and I think they're starting to relax a little bit more at the plate, and with that, the strikeout numbers will go down. But I think it's just a lot of players on the team pressing at the same time, just because as a whole they've been struggling offensively, and I think that will kind of fix itself over time.
I
Yeah, I
hope
agree.
so. Ultimately, I mean, that's what we can only hope for. What I'm not the biggest fan on is it looks like we are adjusting our approach at the plate depending on what pitcher is on. If it is a higher end pitcher, we seem to be trying to take more pitches to run up their pitch count. So we're missing out on a lot of prime time spots, including first time strikes.
Oh
And
yeah,
what's
that's
not
Goldie right
versus,
now.
Yeah, it
well,
is. Let's take that.
it's dependent, it's been dependent on the pitcher. Because there were guys like Nola where everybody was swinging early. It has definitely been a team approach where they are choosing different pitchers to try to make work harder. But the thing that I think the staff or whoever is in charge of that strategy is forgetting is if you're getting something juicy and you can get on base, you being on base now makes that pitcher work harder a heck of a lot more than like, yeah, taking the risk and having it be an out. If they're giving you like it should be more one of those things like you're giving somebody the light on 3-0. Only swing if it's down the center. That should be your 0-0 approach right now. If it is down the center, swing. If it's a breaking ball, fine. Let it go because you might pop that up and whatnot and make them work harder. But like that, I'm not liking that approach. I'm liking the attack approach. Like we had on Nola, we got to him early. We were able to extend and then use our speed to get some runs against him. But these ones where we're just trying to like wait it out and be like, hey, maybe we can tire him out by making him throw his strikes. It's like it's not working. And then we're chasing because we're giving up these juicy ones because now they're in the lead. They're 0-1 or they're
Yep.
1-2, and they have the advantage of the pitcher as the pitcher. They normally always do, but if you can get ahead in the count, you can guess a whole lot easier what's gonna come.
Yeah, that's kind of why I believe they're pressing too, is because you look at what like Goldschmidt and Arenado have done the last couple of minus the second half of last season, everyone struggled, but like MVP Goldie or like 2022, 2021 Arenado, they wouldn't let those first pitch strikes go right down the middle like that. And Goldie's been doing it over and over and over again. It's been driving me nuts.
Hmm.
So I think their either approach has changed or maybe a little bit of natural regression, or maybe like it's an eyesight thing or something. But they don't typically like historically weren't hitting like that. So
I agree with the approach change part of it. And at any rate, we kind of need an approach change, especially after how bad the offense was last year at times. So especially down the stretch, I think there was a certain part of the team that said, all right, let's look at a different direction on how we're going to attack pitchers. But frankly, I don't really like team approaches on how to attack a pitcher in general. I think it really is individual,
stay
player to
within
player.
yourself. Yeah,
100%. Like
exactly.
I whenever I played, I like working deep counts. Donnie did that. Matt Carpenter does that. Norris Newport does that. But there's some guys who want to jump on the first pitch that makes them feel comfortable. Like some guys don't like, falling behind in the count or don't like hitting with two strikes. Don't make them do that if that's not what they're comfortable doing. So
Exactly. And then they start overthinking because baseball is a mental sport. Someone tells you, "Hey, do this," and like you're used to doing it the other way, you're already overthinking,
Hmm.
um, and you don't want that. So
right.
No, not at all. So, well, that covers it for the community questions. Anything you guys didn't get to cover that you wanted to bring up during those?
The only thing I kind of had wrote down as a note was that when you talk about Goldschmidt and that the value that he has, the biggest thing I look at with that is the value that we can get back. Like I said, with being able to replenish the farm system on the pitching side, and how many guys that we have that can slot over to that first base side that are already in lineup right now, especially with Newt coming back, where it's not. There's a lot we're losing as far as leadership, but as far as total impact in the lineup, as far as if he hits 25, 30 home runs and 80 RBIs like he did last year, that's kind of replaceable in our lineup the way it's currently constructed. Especially with, like I said, how much impact pitching we might be able to get back for that. But like you said, though, the deal has to be right. So
Yeah,
that's the
it
only thing
all
I
comes
had.
down to the deal, ultimately, what somebody's willing to offer us. How about you, Arjun?
I'm anti-trading Goldschmidt, even at his worst right now, for a couple reasons. Is because even at his worst, he's still going to knock 25 over the fence and driving at 80. And I don't believe that's so easy to replace with their lineup because no one's hitting right now. So,
Yeah.
personally, and then secondly, he's like you never want to trade someone when their value's the lowest, which is you've heard me talk about like trading Tommy Edman in the past. It's we should have
Right.
traded him when you had 6 WAR, or like the same thing with Dylan Carlson. Like when we had this outfield influx, and I was a big O'Neill believer, and everyone wanted O'Neill gone, and everyone's like, "Why is O'Neill doing so good now?" It's like I'm not even mad about it, but it's just funny how it works, like if you have a vision of what you want your future to be on the team, like you need to maximize some of these guys that are not part of that vision for the future. So like if Goldschmidt is not playing well, you're not going to get maximum value for him. So like he means more to us than he would be on another team unless someone blows us out of the water. I just don't see that right now with the way he's playing.
Yeah, I don't see it happening either. Anything else you wanted to bring up, RJ, today?
Newt's back, so that's
Let's go.
exciting. Newt in the lineup. I think he's a key cog for this offense. He's going to help us get going. He takes, just like Brendan Donovan, takes professional at bats, gets on base all the time, and he's got pop too. He's got surprising pop. So hopefully he'll be one of the keys to helping this offense get back on track.
Let's hope so. We'll see how things go tonight. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for joining us today. Community, thank you for providing us with some awesome questions. So we had things to talk about, and we hope you guys enjoyed listening. We'd love to hear your opinions on what you think we should do about this. Let us know and stay tuned for the next mailbag sometime in the next month. Anyways, for Birds on a Blue Note, I'm Trevor. We got RJ, Zach. Hope you guys have a great night and enjoy the Diamondback series. Take care, everybody.